This is the Church of St. Paul in the Desert.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I've been here for 4 days and I'm already in love. I'm in love with the beauty of this area. From the dining room table in the apartment where Mike and I are staying, we look out at mountains. And we know now that they are different every minute as the sun and the clouds play across them. I've begun to figure out which canyon drive goes one way for how long. Mike and I have been up the tramway on what was probably the worst day to do that this week, when it was cloudy and snowy and cold up there. Made us feel right like we were home again in Maine. But you all have been wonderful in greeting us. Thank you. Thanks to those who furnished our apartment with love and put food in our refrigerator and even a prayer shawl on our sofa. And thank you to your rector, your wonderful rector, who has made us so much a part of life already. I'm Chilton, and I love to be called Chilton. If you prefer, you can certainly call me Bishop. I answer to that. I even answered to Bishop Chilton, but when it gets any more formal than that, I think you're talking about my mother-in-law. So we are so glad to be here, and we're filled with gratitude and real pleasure at being here with you all. This congregation is lively and faithful, and I've already begun to feel like a part of you because of your gracious welcome. Now, to the gospel that we have in front of us for today. Sometimes I find myself almost involuntarily praying, "Oh, Jesus, sometimes you're so hard." Because this gospel is very demanding. It brooks no quarter. It makes no room for wiggles. It is absolutely clear that we are to do the impossible. We are to love our enemies. We are to turn the other cheek. We are to give more than any justice settlement might ask. If we are sued for our coat, our cloak is due as well. We are to maintain connection with people even beyond the first mile, even to the second mile, even when our knees are shaking and we'd rather be somewhere else. This is not an easy gospel, but actually none of them are. And I want to tell you a story about loving your enemies and turning the other cheek. It's a story that comes from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was established in South Africa as part of the settlement in the post-apartheid era. Presiding over that Truth and Reconciliation Commission was our own Anglican Archbishop, Desmond Tutu. Now, history will judge how much effect the work of that commission had long term. But what is very clear is that its immediate effect was to make it possible for people to live in one country side by side with the hope of putting the past behind them. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission basically set out a format for conversation between those who had been injured or oppressed in apartheid and those who had done the injuring and oppressing. The commission brought victim and offender together in one room in the presence of a loving, listening, trained tribunal of people, a group of people, really more than just three, who were providing the support and assuring the order of the proceedings. Each person who came with a story of hurt, loss, oppression was to tell their story before all gathered. Then they were to turn and address the offender and speak directly to the offender. Then they were to ask the gathered group, what is it they want from that group? What does the injured person want this group, sitting in present witness, to do? You may have heard this story from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. If you have, it's always good to hear it again. But it is, for me, one of the strongest examples of what it's like to turn the other cheek and to love your enemy. A woman, we'll call her Miss Lily, was coming to the commission with her story. Right in front of her, a marauding gang of whites had murdered her husband and her son because they were suspected of riling up the blacks against the white oppression. Right in front of her, she was forced to watch torture and murder. Her only son died, and her husband died. So here is Miss Lily telling her story, and the man who did the torturing and murdering over here on the other side of the bench. And so, having told her story, Miss Lily turns to the man who did this torture and murder. She straightened herself up with dignity, and she said to him, "You have taken away from me everything I loved. You have left my life empty. Everyone I loved, my only son, my beloved husband, gone. And you did that. You took away my loves. You ruined my life." The offender stood silently. And then Miss Lily took the next step of asking the offender for a reply, for some kind of resolution or some extension of apology, some acknowledgement of responsibility. And so here's what she said to the offender for the second part. She said, "I'll tell you what I want from you. I want you to come round and visit me about once a week. I want us to sit and talk about things that matter. I want us to have tea. Because you see, I'm all alone now. And I want you to come and visit me." Then she turned to the gathered group and she said, "I want someone to come by my side and help me. I'm getting on and I don't move so well." So someone came to her side. She said to the group, "I want you all to watch me while I go over to this man and I embrace him like a son, because I don't have a son now. He has to be my son." And so it happened. Now, more than just that one story, Can you think of what sort of world it would be like if that happened more often? Can you think about how retaliation would stop? The cycle of injury and counter-injury, of offense and retaliation. Can you think of a world like that? Where Ms. Lily and the man who killed her beloved husband and son became family to each other. That's what this gospel is about. That vision of a world where turning the other cheek is not an act of masochistic passivity, but a radical statement about a whole new way of living with one another. The refusal to retaliate. The vulnerability we offer to each other when the other cheek is turned, undefensively. The kind of world where we can embrace the one who hurts us the most and make them part of our family. Now, these are words from Jesus, who did more than just speak these words. He actually made them possible. Because what he did was live in his own life those very words that he gave to us. He turned his other cheek when he was abused during his passion. From the cross, he spoke words of reconciliation. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He turned to those on his right and left and invited them to be with him in paradise. Because of that gift of sacrifice, that loving that Jesus demonstrates, you and I have the grace available to live once in a while in a golden possibility, once in a while, to live that radiant vision of non-retaliation, of enemy love, of justice, of reconciliation. Because of Jesus, who lived the words he's given us today in his own life. Because of that, we can have moments like Ms. Lizzie had with her adopted son. May it be so. Amen.